Welcome to Virtualize Everything, where we strive to inform and educate the viewer about technology and technology-related topics. Today's video presentation is going to be about installing Proxmox 6.4 on your home virtualization server so you can begin creating all kinds of fun home lab projects and learning about home virtualization. There are going to be a few steps that we need to do before we begin installing Proxmox on our server. We're going to need to create a USB drive and gather a copy of Proxmox. Let's go ahead and do that now. To gather a copy of our Proxmox image, we're going to head over to proxmox.com and click on Downloads, click on Proxmox Virtual Environment, click on ISOs, and here at Proxmox 6.4 ISO installer, go ahead and click Download. I have already done this and prepared everything in advance, so no need to do it again. Then, my suggestion for USB creation tools is Etcher. I started using Etcher years ago with Raspberry Pis and have grown quite accustomed to it. Etcher also has versions for Windows and Linux. There are many great ISO creation tools for SD cards and USB drives, so you do not have to use Etcher. It is just my software of choice and the software we're going to use for today's video. Now that we have both a copy of Etcher and a copy of the Proxmox ISO, we're going to open Etcher, then we're going to select Flash from File and select our Proxmox image that we downloaded. Now we hit Select Target, and if you had a USB drive in, it would show up right here. Go ahead and click the checkbox at the front of it. It would be right here, and hit Select. Then press Flash, and Etcher will make your USB stick. Once Etcher is done flashing your USB stick, it'll be time to remove it from your computer and insert it into a USB port in the back of your server. With your USB stick inserted into your server, go ahead and press the power button on your server and beginning tapping delete or escape. I like to alternate back and forth as I have found systems use one or the other to enter the BIOS. At this point, enter your BIOS and configure your system to boot from USB in your boot option settings. Then save those settings and reboot your system. Once your system has rebooted, you will be presented with this screen. As you see, it is in a web browser format. I used Proxmox to virtualize this installation just so I could present it to you, because I had no other good way to capture the installation process for today's presentation. But it will be identical to your installation process if you're installing Proxmox 6.4. Use your arrow keys to select Install Proxmox VE if it isn't already selected. It should be selected as default. Then press Enter and you will be presented with this screen. Go ahead, read the user agreement, know what you're agreeing to. It's always a good practice. Press I agree in your lower right hand corner and move on to selecting your hard drive. Now, today's presentation is going to be about using a single hard drive. This is my suggested configuration for installing Proxmox. One single drive to hold your images, and a larger drive array for using and storing a VM. I have many times used a single drive to run a virtualization server, and that works fine as well if you do not have multiple drives for configuring an array at a later date. But I always configure my arrays after I have installed my operating system on a single drive. Click Next and move on to the next window. At this window, you're going to be asked to enter your password, a confirmation of your password, and an email address. If you do not wish to enter your email address, the email address that appears as default will give you an error message. But oftentimes I have used none@none.com successfully to bypass this screen. Once you have entered the credentials that you wish to enter, hit Next. Now here, there are a few important things we need to pay attention to. The IP address of the server, the gateway address, the DNS name, and the host name. The host name can make it easier at a later date to contact your Proxmox server in some scenarios. Most of the time, I find myself using IP addresses and not this technique, but some people do use it. Enter the IP address that you would like your server to be at. Take note that this is a static IP address and will not change. Your gateway address is going to be the address of your firstmost router on your network, usually your wireless router in most home network configurations. But a good majority of us do like playing with things, so this may differ depending on your network setup. Most of the time, this should be auto-configured correctly when you begin installing Proxmox if you have a network connection and DHCP is set up on your network. Your DNS server can vary. As you can see, mine is here on the network. I use Pi-hole. But if you would like to use some other ones, 1.1.1.1 is Cloudflare, and 8.8.8.8 is Google. Feel free to research some of the other great DNS providers out there if you would like to use them. At the point that you have this screen fully configured as you wish, go ahead and click Next. You will be presented with a summary. Glance it over, make sure everything is configured as you would like. Make alterations by clicking on the item as you wish and press Install when you are ready. The installation process will take a few minutes. When it is finished, your server will reboot and present you with this screen. Take note of the URL in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. It will be your server's IP address that you configured earlier. In front of it will be https://. You do have to use HTTPS to communicate with your server. It will not load a page in HTTP. And at the end, following the colon, is a port number. Your web interface for Proxmox operates by default on port 8006. Make sure you enter it when you type it into your web browser. Sometimes your web browser will present you with a warning message about certificates. To bypass it, usually you scroll to the bottom of the screen, press Advance, and there'll be an option to tell your web browser that it is safe to continue. This may vary depending on the browser you want, but usually with a quick search using a tool like DuckDuckGo, you can figure out how to bypass it very easily. This is all you need to know to successfully begin in using Proxmox 6.4 in your home lab environment. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to help Virtualize Everything bring you informative content like this video. Have a good night.